Thanks for joining School of the American Rifle. We get a lot of questions about when you should be using Aeroshell. Now there's different types of Aeroshell, but the types that are supposed to be used on an AR-15 are Aeroshell 64 and Aeroshell 33 MS. These are the same product. This is the older version, this is the newer version. So either one you have, it's fine. But generally you have to buy it in these large grease gun applicators, and it can get expensive if you don't build a lot of guns. We put it at the benches in these little tins. So this is one of the things that we have here that we like to share with everyone. We also have it in these applicators. It has a little brush. These are Swiss grease tins from Surplus Rifles. But where should you use Aeroshell? Basically any place on the gun that has dissimilar metals that make contact when you're trying to achieve torque value. So if you don't use thread locker or a lock washer on your pistol grip screw, Aeroshell. Castle nut, if you're not using a thread locker, Aeroshell. You see where I'm going here? We have a steel nut, aluminum tube. Barrel nut, underneath of this handguard, we have a steel or a titanium barrel nut, aluminum upper receiver, Aeroshell. Some people will argue, well, why don't I just use something that's more accessible? Why don't I use lithium grease or anti-seize? You can use all those things. The important part is you get a wet torque value. When you're torquing these, pistol grip screw doesn't have a torque value. It's the German spec, good and tight. But we recommend Aeroshell because we found that it gives a more consistent torque value, and over time, when you're cleaning the gun, shooting the gun, fouling, environmental stuff, firing residue, all that stuff, heat cycles, it can cause things like barrel nuts to become very difficult to break free if you're using something like anti-seize. So if you want to use anti-seize or lithium grease or wheel bearing grease here or here, you can do it. It's not going to get you killed in the streets, but it will be more difficult sometimes when you're trying to remove that barrel nut, to change out the barrel, do a rail swap, something like that. So, gotten that warning out of the way. Any place where there's dissimilar metal, even for this Sons of Liberty rail, they might not call for it in the instructions, but since we have a steel screw going into a steel bushing, you don't have to use it here. But you could. It might be a waste. Some rails you have a steel screw going into an aluminum threads. That's where I would use it. So any place there's dissimilar metal. Some people will argue there's no such thing as galvanic corrosion. If you've been around the water enough and you have things that are dissimilar metals like aluminum and steel, galvanic corrosion can happen. Sweat, salt water, anything that gets on components between dissimilar metals can cause problems. So this helps minimize it, helps give you accurate torque values. You can pick it up tons of places online, so I recommend you get it. If you want to, you can also go here and then to there, and you can find it as well. As always, I hope you find this video educational, and before we go, Buffalo Bill's always watching. Grease the threads, or you gets the hose again.